Bionic Ever After? Fusion Patrol Review. After 2 bites at the spin-off series Apple, it seems that Universal finally gave up on the idea of a new Bionic series and brought the promised close to the love story of the $6 Million Man and the Bionic Woman in their 3rd and final reunion movie. Bionic Ever After? Steve and Jamie are just days away from their wedding, and echoing their first attempts at nuptials, the path to a happily ever after isn't smooth. Jamie's bionics are failing again, but she hasn't bothered to tell Steve or her family bionic practitioner, Rudy Wells. Jamie gets increasingly worried that should her bionics fail, Steve will only love her out of pity, because as a licensed PhD in therapy, Jamie knows a person's self-worth is only as good as their ability to run 60 miles an hour. Meanwhile, an Eastern European reject baddie takes control of the U.S. Embassy in Nassau, demanding that the ambassador turn over a guest of the embassy. A guest that has gone missing, causing the hostage situation to drag on for days. As Jamie's condition worsens and she's hospitalized, she calls off the wedding. Unable to deal with sitting around waiting for Jamie to get better and come back to him, Steve asks Oscar for an assignment. He's old friends with the ambassador being held hostage, and he wants to rescue him. Somewhat reluctantly, Oscar agrees. While Steve's on the assignment, Rudy discovers that Jamie's bionics have been infected with a computer virus. Luckily, he's able to cure it with a reboot and a quick scan with Norton antivirus. Steve has also been infected with the virus, so a cured and upgraded Jamie rushes to Nassau to save him. Together, they save the day. Finally, both well again, Steve Austin and Jamie Summers become man and wife. Let's face it, this isn't a very good TV movie, but, and I'll emphasize this big but, it's better than the previous 2 reunion movies. Unshackled from the demands of attempting to launch a new series, they've managed to free themselves from having to introduce new characters that they hope the audience will take a shine to. And instead, they can concentrate on either Steve and Jamie or the developing crisis that will ultimately have to be solved by some bionic action. That said, the 2 parts of the story are still at odds and run mostly parallel with one another, with little or no connection. The 2 threads come together when Steve, distraught over Jamie and in need of something to do, takes the assignment to keep himself distracted. This is where the structure of the film falls apart. This happens about 45 minutes from the end of the 90-minute movie. Prior to this, we've been watching the terrorists casing the embassy, executing their ambush, setting up a nuclear missile, and then searching the embassy for the missing person thereafter. None of that matters. None of it. In the original series, this could have been effectively handled in a brief scene at Oscar Goldman's office, with a single line of dialogue, like this. Steve, terrorists have taken the U.S. Embassy in Nassau. They're holding the ambassador, his wife, a number of important guests that were attending a party, including the Prime Minister. This thermal satellite image shows they've set up a nuclear-armed Scud missile in the embassy grounds. I need you to get down there, find out what's happening, disable that missile, and rescue those hostages. Problem solved. That's the first of the major structural problems to this story. The second is more complicated to explain. At the beginning of this movie, we're introduced to Kimberly, who, we are told, is Oscar Goldman's current top agent. She is in counseling with Jamie because of something horrific that happened on her previous mission. She wants out of the OSI, and she wants Jamie's support. Oscar, though, desperately needs her on this Nassau mission, but she needs a rest and cannot go on the assignment. This leaves Oscar in a bind because apparently he only has Kimberly. There is no mention of Oscar's 2 bionic agents from the last 2 movies. Towards the very end of the film, she accompanies Steve when he goes on the mission. And it turns out she's been working with a terrorist because she's in love with the leader, Kendrick. A question. Why try to get out of the assignment if you're actually in league with the terrorists? Wouldn't it make more sense to take the assignment in the first place and help them? Of course, there's more to it than that. This movie, like the previous two, once again introduces a whole new significant character to the Bionic mythos that has never been there before, and we, the audience, are expected to accept it and go on. It seems Rudy Wells isn't the brilliant sole creator of Bionics after all. He created it with a partner, Dr. Haviland. After a falling out between Haviland and Wells, Haviland tragically died after 20 years of bitter hard drinking. Haviland's daughter, who brilliantly followed in her father's footsteps, is out for revenge. That revenge somehow takes the form of destroying Jamie and Steve, two people who probably never even heard of her father. That's better, isn't it? This bionic virus plot changes the course of Steve's life and bounces him into the terrorist storyline. That's the way real life works. Unrelated events acting upon the cauldron of our lives lead us down unexpected paths. That's much better than the stupidly contrived pairing of the terrorist plotline with Kimberly, the rogue OSI agent in love with a terrorist. Or it would be, but sadly, that's not the way hack writers work. Of course, Kimberly is also the daughter of Dr. Haviland. Kimberly, it seems, not only had the time to become brilliant at bionics without any practical experience, but also managed to become the OSI's top agent. Oh, Oscar, do you even run background checks on your operatives before you hire them? How could you possibly have missed that she was Haviland's daughter? My confidence in the OSI has reached rock bottom. No, wait, it might get just a little lower. 25 minutes into the film, Steve explains to Oscar that the main terrorist, Kendrick, is someone he knows. He was a company man that went rogue after Afghanistan. Steve briefly explains what Kendrick did. Oscar's response?
In 2 seconds, you told me more than anybody else in this building has.
Oscar, Steve worked for you. A company man means Kendrick worked for you. Or possibly the CIA. Either way, Steve apparently was working for you at the time and would have reported it to you. It should be in your files. How could the OSI be so incompetent that they don't have this info on Kendrick? May I suggest that the confusion over the years about what OSI stands for has finally been resolved. It's clearly the Office of Strategic Incompetence. In keeping the story relevant for 1994 audiences, Jamie has been infected with a computer virus. Rudy Wells' quaint 1994-era explanation of a computer virus is hilarious, but delivered with much authority.
What you have is a circuitry sickness. In a way, it's the same kind of sickness that a computer in your office would have, a data virus. Something is telling your brain, telling your circuits that you're sick. In reality, there's nothing wrong with you.
Also, Rudy can't help but tinker. While he's rebooting Jamie in the operating room, he goes ahead and makes some upgrades to her. Now, no one is going to complain about getting new features. I'd love it when a new version of the operating system of my iPhone comes out and I get all sorts of new features. I'm less crazy about the corresponding decrease in performance that invariably accompanies these things. I certainly hope Jamie doesn't experience a performance problems or bugs with this new release. Now, what sort of enhancements, you say? Jamie's bionic ear now has night vision and visual targeting crosshairs. I could, perhaps, forgive the night vision. The director may have been attempting to show that Jamie can now echolocate in the dark. But later, when she uses the targeting crosshairs in her field of vision to disable a van, it seems highly unlikely this is supposed to be a sonic enhancement. I wonder if, after Steve gets his repairs, he'll be able to hear better with his bionic eye. One final note. At the end, Steve and Jamie finally get married. Fans of the original series can hardly be disappointed. One of the hallmarks of the series was the believability of the love between Steve and Jamie, and the tragedy that their life-saving bionic surgery kept them apart. In the real world, of course, it was the demands of the format of episodic television that kept them apart. It is somewhat bittersweet that the finality of this reunion movie means that the characters can, at long last, be together, but that we, the audience, will not see them again. A big thanks to the producers for giving us this chance to say farewell to our friends, Steve Austin and Jamie Summers. I just wish you'd done it 2 movies earlier.